Museums can be many things to many people. Educational institutions, forums for ideas, opportunities for exploring themes and threads through history, and as gateways to other cultures, past and present. It has been said many times, and for good reason, that every object in a museum tells a story of people, places, nature, ideas. These are stories that are far from being over. They will be retold and reinvented again and again, revisited every time someone stands before an object and tries to penetrate its secrets. Objects are a means by which we communicate one culture to another, but there are also ways of creating connections between cultures inherent in the objects. Connections sometimes obvious and often not quite so obvious. If you will, objects scattered in the museums around the world are emissaries for cultures, ideas, and histories. It's interesting that while we can recognize objects as emissaries, there are some who still continue to call for restitution, for the return of objects to their original home. They argue, amongst other things, that these objects can only be fully appreciated in their original surroundings, and they don't tire reminding us that these objects belong where they originated from. In suggesting this, they recall the torturous and aggressive history of the appropriation of art institutionalized under the Romans, beginning with the looting of the Etruscans in 396 BC, and repeated again and again and again to our own day. Many past practices, though commonplace and accepted in their day, are now rightly considered improper and even unjust. Yet from some corners, we continue to hear for restitution, reminding us again and again of these historic injustices. This is a very, very old conversation with nuances that will no doubt remain sensitive and often bitter consideration for some time to come. Nevertheless, in the face of this, museums have an increasingly important role in the exchange and preservation of memory and the exploration of identity and diplomacy. Museums are uniquely placed to allow us to explore our history, culture, and identity. And equally important, the identity and culture of those we see as the other. Museums create situations where identities are challenged, where the other is challenged. The objects represented in the series of publications we are celebrating with this Congress, objects being held by museums throughout the world, is an opportunity to celebrate not only Uzbek culture, but the very notion of museums, the very sharing of culture, and with it, the very delicate notion of identity and the other. There are those who will continue to demand that objects removed from their original milieu be returned from whence they came. They believe they've been wronged and that wrong should be righted. While respecting this, I offer another reflection. Each of the objects represented in these publications signifies the inherent linkage through objects between Uzbekistan and other cultures. Each of these objects not only represents and celebrates Uzbek culture, but also each of the cultures these objects have touched on their historic journeys as they ventured outside of modern Uzbekistan. They serve a valuable mission as ambassadors of Uzbek culture and history, as well as ambassadors of the very essential notion of the universality of culture. With these publications, Uzbekistan is celebrating itself while simultaneously embracing the rest of the world. There's only one word that comes to my mind when I think of this project, and that is bravo. Спасибо большое.